Hello friends, and welcome back to another video, and a special big hello if you are new. Today I'm going to be sharing with you the books that I read in February. I read 4 books. I read 1 physical book and 3 ebooks, and one of those ebooks was a short story. So let's get into it. Alright, as always, I'm going to start with my physical book, and the first physical book that I read, or the only physical book that I read in February rather, was The Bear and the Nightingale by Katherine Arden. This is set in the Russian wilderness, and it is very fairy tale-like, so you literally feel like you've been dropped into the midst of a dark, cold, dangerous, snowy Russian fairy tale. It tells the story of a young girl named Vasha. Her mother has passed away, giving birth to her, and she is a very wild and high-spirited child. The members of her community leave offerings for the old gods or the old spirits, and Vasha can see and communicate with them. So for example, there is one on her family's hearth that protects her family from, it protects her household from dangers or evil spirits getting in. There's also a different one that's with their horses and livestock that help keep them calm and trainable and a little bit more subdued. Vasha's brothers and father go off to Moscow, and her father comes back with a new wife. Vasha's stepmother is very pious and pretty much puts a stop to the members of Vasha's village, because her father is kind of the head of the village, to leaving these offerings for the old gods. And as a result, evil starts to seep in to her village, and Vasha has to do what she needs to put a stop to it. I think I originally rated this book 3.5 stars, but the reality is it's really a really solid 4-star now that I've had a little bit more time to reflect on it. Typically when I read books, I either rate them a little too high or a little too low, and then once I've had a couple weeks of perspective, I know more where it lies. So I definitely rated this one a little bit too low. I loved how atmospheric it was. I love books for some reason. I don't know if it's where I loved Anastasia as a child, but for some reason, I love books that are set in Russia or by Russian writers. I don't know what it is. So this was already definitely my cup of tea. I loved Vasha as a character. She was so strong-willed, and this isn't your stereotypical fantasy or romantasy, but she was such a unique female character in a more fantasy-based novel that I loved. She was so strong-willed, and she was so determined to do what was right, and it wasn't there were no gray areas for her. It was, this is the right thing to do, and I'm going to do it regardless of how I'm perceived or regardless how other people feel about me. She was really, really strong-willed and determined to do, like I said, she was determined to do what was right for her community and also for herself. And she has a lot of wonder and a lot of desire to rise above those means of typical womanhood for the time that she lived in. I just loved it. It is really fascinating, the difference between good and evil and the spirits. Even some characters that were supposed to kind of be evil or bad characters, like Vasha's stepmother, and then there was a priest who comes to cater to the community and village, who is pretty vile. You still kind of feel compassion to them with what they're going through, and you can kind of understand why they're doing what they're doing. So I really loved that there wasn't just a good and bad side. It was all just very mixed in and intertwined to one another, especially in terms of the humans. I also really loved kind of the religious extremism and how that feels very relevant to life today, and how, just kind of pushing one form of belief system on a whole community of people who feel, differently and don't all believe the same, and how there can be really tragic effects as a result of that. I don't know. I might be putting a lot more thought into that than is necessary, but I loved this book so much. And there are 2 more. This is a trilogy. And I really want to dive into the next 2 now, but because it is so atmospheric of a read, I'm going to wait until next winter before I read the next 2, because I just feel like I need to read it in the depths of winter, like January, going into February. I just feel like that will be the perfect time to kind of read the next 2, just because it kind of provides the right vibes to go along with the story. But I loved this one. It was probably my favorite read of the entire month. Next, moving on to ebooks. The first ebook that I read was, I think it's called The Fall Risk by Abby Jimenez. This is a short story. It was released through like Kindle and Prime and all of that, kind of in correlation with Valentine's Day. It tells a story of 2 neighbors. They have connecting apartments, and then there's like a breezeway between them. And one, I think it's like a Friday or Thursday, right before the weekend, they kind of walk outside and realize that the steps have been removed and they're kind of trapped up in their apartments. They do have like a ladder to kind of get up and down if they needed to for safety, but basically they are trapped up there. So they kind of turn this breezeway into like a living room of sorts, and they have like a little mini pool out there for each other. They have breakfast, they watch movies, and they really just kind of hit it off and get to know each other on this weird like weekend that they're forced to spend together. It's a really great meet cute. I feel like Abby Jimenez does meet cutes better than anybody. I don't know. They're so creative. So I really loved that. Both of the characters are kind of dealing with their own issues, which is very like Abby Jimenez fashion. Like, it's a very cutesy little rom-com-y love story, and then it's like flashing lots of trauma at you. Our male character is getting a divorce, like it's official that his divorce is like finalized right around Valentine's Day, which I'm sure is lovely. And then our female character has a stalker, and it has really impaired her quality of life, and legally there's not a lot of things that she can do to kind of put a stop to this. And she works from home. She's very weary of getting into a relationship because of her situation, and explaining that situation, and then how that could impact a person that she cares about. And she's constantly moving and very just much isolating herself from going out and things like that. And through this weekend together, they kind of help each other heal through those things. I feel like I'm probably not doing the best job at describing this book, but it was amazing. I loved it. I love Abby Jimenez's writing so much, and this book was so good. I wish that it was longer. I wish that there was more to it, because I just loved it so much. I gave it 3.5 stars just because, like I said, I really, really wanted more, and I wanted a lot more of the things that the characters were going through to be fleshed out a little bit more. And I think had this had been kind of a regular sized novel, it would have really hit much more, rather than like it moving at a much quicker pace and wrapping up quickly. But it was still really good and sweet and wonderful. And it just has me so excited for her new book coming out next month. I can't wait to read more from her. The next book that I read was Heat of the Everflame, which is the 3rd book in the Kindred's Curse series by Penn. I loved the first book, Spark of the Everflame. I devoured it. I could not put it down. I loved it so much. The second book was a drag for me. I didn't really enjoy the second book, and there were lots of things that irritated me. So I knew going into the third one, I had to really like it. It had to really deliver, or I was probably going to like stop the series. And I did really enjoy it. I don't want to go into a lot of detail about the plot, just because I don't want to spoil it for anyone who, wants to read the series. But basically, Diem is kind of on a journey throughout the different realms and learning more about these different communities and people and how they live, and how she wants her realm to be. And she's making a lot of self-discovery about herself in that process. I think my favorite part of this book was the world building. It was really nice to get to see the other realms within this world and how they lived and how different they all were. I really, really loved that element. The world building was very good. I think that's why I love reading like fantasy books and romantasy books. I just love the world building and how people just come up with these like worlds that no one's ever been to or no one's ever experienced in their head. They just make them up. And it's just so fascinating to read about how those world systems work. DM, there was a little bit of character growth with her. She definitely is embracing who she is and the power that she has. She's also doing a much better job at embracing the people who care about her and who want to help her and allowing them to do so. There's definitely an element of a found family. It's not a super strong found family as much as like an ACOTAR or even like other Sarah J. Maas books. But there is still a little bit of an element of a found family. DM still was quite annoying in the way that she forgives people who don't need to be forgiven and doesn't kind of just take them out. I know that sounds kind of gruesome, but it's the truth, and it consistently kind of comes back to bite her. So there was also a character who has kind of been a part of the series from book one who comes into play pretty strongly in this book, and they were extremely irritating, and it was frustrating for DM to just like constantly just like cater to that character and to like try to please them. It was incredibly frustrating, and I wish like she would stop doing things like that. It's irritating. But all in all, I did like it. I will continue the series. It did kind of redeem itself from book two. With that being said, this book was over 1,000 pages, and I think probably like 300 or maybe give or take a little bit more could have been cut from this book. I felt that it was just so long, and there were so many things and like so many miscommunications and so many conversations with the characters where it'd be like, I really need to tell you this thing. I have like this confession, or this is bothering me, and we really need to talk about it. We need to sort this out for, you know, the better of mankind or whatever. And it'd be like, oh, well, we can't talk about it now. And there'd be like 2 or 3 pages where they would have this discussion, but they wouldn't actually discuss the issue at hand. And then, you know, a little bit later, there would be the same thing. And it was just really irritating. I just feel like we could have chopped all of that and just kept the plot going. I think that this book put me in a little bit of a reading rut just because of that. It was just kind of frustrating and just really dragging on. But again, all in all, I still really enjoyed the series. I will definitely read book 4. But I'm still iffy. I just don't like it as well as some other romantasy books that I've read. The last book that I read was a photo finish by Elsie Silver. This is the second book in the Gold Rush Ranch series. I loved this one. It's probably my favorite of the Gold Rush Ranch series so far, and there's only 2, so I mean, I don't know. But we get a glimpse of Violet Eaton. I love Chestnut Springs by Elsie Silver. It's still my favorite thing from her. I devour those books. I don't know what she put in them. All of her books are great, but those books were just so good. And it was really nice to have a little glimpse of the Eatons and to get to see Violet and what she's up to. I loved that. I really loved Violet as a character, and I loved how she pushes herself to become the person that she wants to be, and she puts herself in, you know, kind of uncomfortable situations to grow. And I really liked that. She's also a character who, if she feels disrespected by someone, she's going to distance herself. She felt very just suffocated by her family. She found them very suffocating, and they just wouldn't let her live her life. So she left and she moved. And it's not that she doesn't love her family. It's just that, you know, she wanted to be who she wanted to be, and she couldn't do that as freely. There was also a little bit of a history with her and the main character, or the main male character in the story. And, you know, he messed up and she just completely like cut him off for a few years. And, you know, it made him work very hard to like redeem himself, which I loved. Our main male character is just that very broody kind of romance character that we all love, that we probably wouldn't love as much in real life, but in a romance novel, it's fun. But I really enjoyed this one, and I can't wait to read more of the series and finish it up. And Elsie Silver has a new book coming out in March, which I'm really, really excited for. I love her writing. I don't know what it is, but there's something special about it, at least for me. All right, that sums up the books that I read in February. I did hit, like I said, somewhere in this video, I hit a bit of a reading rut. I've been trying to work my way through the Master and the Margarita, and it is just not a book that you can, I mean, it is a book that you can read cover to cover, but there's so much symbolism and thought and just like analysis to really get everything that that book has to offer. And I was really trying to force myself to just power through and finish the book because I really wanted to finish it in February. But I've been reading like different like literary analysis, different like little journal things about it. I've been following a website that breaks down like the chapter sections and then it gives you like a summary with the symbolism and kind of what all it means and how it tied into like Soviet Russia. And I think because I was taking a more like scholarly approach to this book, I put myself in a rut. Because, you know, sometimes after a long day at work or, you know, if you just want to sit down and read 30 minutes before bed, you don't really want to kind of go into it studiously with what you're reading. And I think where I was forcing myself to do that, it made it really difficult for me to pick up a book. And then I was also reading the Everflame book, which was kind of dragging in sections, and I just put myself in a bit of a rut. And we are trying really hard to work our way out of it, where I've not read any books since the Elsie Silver book, but hopefully soon. But I wanted to share with you what it is that I'm currently reading before I let you go. So I am still reading The Master and the Margarita. I don't have very much left of it, though. I think like 70 or 80 pages, so hopefully I'll finish that this week. But I've also started reading The Frozen River. Just kind of a little side note, when I'm in a reading rut, I find that either rereading a book that I absolutely love or reading a vast array of genres helps me get out of it. So I'm going the vast array of genres route right now. So like I said, I'm reading The Master and the Margarita, which is very like satire. It's a classic. But I'm also reading The Frozen River. This is kind of a mystery historical fiction. It tells a story about a midwife in 1789. There's been she keeps a journal basically of the births and lives and deaths and little bits of comings and goings within the community or the village that she lives in. And there's this really horrible situation where this man assaults a woman and he is found dead. And it just kind of leads to this big, you know, mysterious events and different situations within the community. It really is turning everyone and dividing them into different sides. I'm not too far in it, but I am enjoying it. I've seen so many people talk about this book and say how good it is. One of my friends have said that this is like their favorite book of the year so far. So I'm hoping that it's one of mine. I do really enjoy reading it. It's very, very detailed. I've noticed Ariel, Lawson, her writing is extremely detailed, and I like it because it feels very immersive into this town. It's in Maine. It doesn't say exactly where it is, or at least I don't see it on here. But so I've been reading that. I also wanted to do Middlemarch in March this year, so I've started it. I am not very far at all. As you can tell, this book is massive, and I really do not think that I will finish it this month. But I love it. I love it so much. It is very slow paced, but it is just cozy. And the characters are wonderful. And it's a little humorous, I think. But I was working the other day and I was just thinking about this book. Like I was typing up my notes after my session and I was just thinking about this book and how I couldn't wait to like read a little bit before I go to bed. So that's what I've been doing. I've just been reading a little bit before I go to bed because The Frozen River is a little bit heavier and I don't like to read very dark things before I go to sleep because then I have nightmares. So this has been the perfect thing to read before bed and I love it. I love it. And I'm so like barely into it. I can't imagine how I'm going to feel once I finish it or once I'm really in the thick of it. It's been a treat. And then the other book that I have kind of on hand right now is The Love Song of Ricki Wilde by Tia Williams. This is, I think, a little bit of magical realism and it's a romance. I've not started it, but I do kind of have it on my Kindle just in case these books aren't fitting my needs. And then I've been listening to, I think it's called Finding Me, which is Viola Davis's memoir. I love listening to memoirs on audiobook. I love hearing people tell me their story in their own words. And Viola Davis's is very heavy, very traumatic, very dark. She lived a very, within her childhood, and she's a very resilient person because it's heavy. And, I've read other memoirs where characters have grown up poor or characters who, are people of color and have, seen a lot and struggled a lot in ways that I could never imagine. But this one is definitely probably the most like shocking to me how anyone could survive that. And I think it's a big testament to who she is as a person. But I am enjoying it. I love the writing. I love hearing her act out the different parts. And despite the trauma that, her family has caused, how much she loves them still. And I am really enjoying it. So I've got lots of different books here. We're trying to pull ourselves out of this reading rut, so hopefully I will, and obviously I will talk more about these books in my March wrap-up. But anywho, I feel like I've babbled on about books enough. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being here if you're new and you decided to click on my video. Thank you so much if you've seen another video and you've decided to come back and watch another one. Like, that's mind-boggling to me. It really means the entire world. But anywho, I hope that you have a great day. Thank you for listening to me babble on about books, and I will see you next time. Bye.